Okay, perfect. So it's my understanding that the purpose of today is to talk about or give an introduction to ERP, SAP, Oracle, and how it relates to logistics and supply chain. And so the hope is this is a good primer to help you have a much better interview, a much better conversation. Is that your understanding of what today is?
Yes, I
Excellent.
do.
Excellent. So my hope is anytime you invest time in a training like this or you invest time in learning, your hope is that you can do something that you couldn't do before. Whether it's a skill that you have, it's knowledge that you have. But in the reality, if you're in a position where you're a job seeker, you want to be able to have your resume reflect the important information so you can get an opportunity for a conversation. And inside that conversation, you want to sound intelligent and you want to feel intelligent and understand what that means. So I think today you'll be able to have more vocabulary, a better knowledge, and a better understanding of how all the pieces fit together inside an ERP. Sound good?
Yes, that's good.
All right. So now before I go into this, I want to talk about ERP. ERP is an acronym for Enterprise Resource Planning, which is really a pretty bad name. There's no good name for it except for the fact that it's a piece of software that manages lots and lots of functionality inside a business. So there's the incoming products that you buy and you store. You may do some assembly or even some manufacturing, and there's all the product that leaves your warehouse or your store. There's all the people who manage sales orders and purchase orders and accounting and payroll. And so basically ERP is a piece of software that brings all those people together so that everyone can see their slice of the pie. Now,
Hmm.
when you look at it from a global perspective, you probably know this better than I do. The concept of supply chain and logistics, which is not my expertise. I am a specific cog inside the bigger picture, but there's all these raw materials that get assembled. Like in the case of this, if you're a company who makes laptops, you're either making or you're buying keyboards, which they in turn are building that from some sort of semi-finished good, which ultimately comes from some raw good somewhere on the earth. And then likewise, you may not sell to the customer. Your customer may be one or two, three, or four times removed. But the reality is, when in your world of building laptops, even though it's such a small piece of the overall puzzle, it's a fairly or even tremendously complex process. So before I go further, what's your background?
My background, I have a postgraduate degree in economics,
Okay,
and that was back home in Cameroon. But here in the US, I have a master's degree in transportation and logistics.
excellent. So you know this process way better than I do. So let's move into the actual ERP stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. In the world of ERP, you can divide it in a couple different ways, and I want to start and introduce the concept in relation to products, and specifically on the purchase side of products. Okay,
Okay.
so if you're in business of doing something, you're either doing it in terms of products or you're doing it in terms of services or potentially both. If you're a tire store, you're buying product, you're sticking it on the stuff on your shelf in volume. Someone comes in, you do some service for them, you sell the product, and they're off to the races. So in an ERP world, you will have what's called a product master. And in this product master, it's a list of all the products and services that you will potentially interact with. But just because you have a product master doesn't mean you have it in stock. So what that means is you'll use a document called a purchase order to go and buy it. So a purchase order is like a document that says, hey, I wish something to happen, right? It's a in most situations, it's just a control document. It's your communication to the vendor. Hey, I want this. Here's how much I'm willing to pay, and here's when I want it. And if the vendor did exactly what you want, it'll land on your dock at one of your many warehouses around the world, and you'll create a material receipt for it.
Hmm.
Now, is this too low level or is this too high level? What are your thoughts?
These two levels, the purchase order and the material receipt.
Mm-hmm.
No, the purchase order, I even used the purchase order a long time ago when I was procurement manager. So I have have an idea about purchase order.
Okay.
Like, just, I mean, that was even back home, but it's the document when you order something, you can send to the supplier saying that, okay, maybe I need 10 pieces of this material and give some, precision about the material and price,
Yes.
and you send to him.
Yep, that's it. That's perfect. So that is a document that leads to something to happen. The material receipt means something landed on your dock. Now, what's interesting about material receipt is that it has two major consequences. One is your system says, I now have some inventory somewhere in my possession. It's now within the visibility of the users. The second thing that happens is it has an accounting consequence. It tells you, hey, I just received some assets. So in accounting world, you have your asset called product assets. And then it also says, I potentially owe someone, no, it's not I potentially, I definitely owe someone for this, but it's not that liability isn't quite real until I get to the vendor invoice. So, but it does, I guess my biggest point is it has an accounting consequence. Now, in terms of accounting, we'll move to the vendor invoice. But before I go there, I want to talk about sort of the logistics of material managing. So when you complete your material receipt, it deposits inventory into your warehouse. But just because oftentimes companies have a receiving area or a staging area, or sometimes they even have receiving or staging warehouses where the product gets broken down, and then you'll use some sort of move to get it from point A to point B. Now, if you're a $20 million operation, this move is reasonably simple. If you're a billion dollar operation, there's a little bit more sophistication to the move. You may have a distribution order, which is similar to like a purchase order. To a distribution order is to an inventory move, as a purchase order is to a material receipt. The distribution order is, hey, I want to do this. I'm going into too much detail at this point, but my comment is there's a vehicle to move inventory around inside the warehouse, and there are entire people whose job is to manage this one piece of process right here alone. And
who is that? The warehouse manager?
It could be the warehouse manager. It could be the receiving manager. It could be a combination of those two, and it depends on, like, let's break a little bit. Let's just talk about warehouse management. So let's talk about a warehouse that's about 150,000 square feet. And you have three real areas. Actually, you have about 5 real areas inside that warehouse. Way back in the back, you have deep storage. And deep storage is where you have the biggest volume of stuff. And it typically is touched the least number of times. Next, closer to the front of the warehouse, but not a little bit higher volume, but not super high volume, is where you'll have your sort of your medium volume product. It won't be as high volume. It'll be easier to get access to. It may not need a forklift, for example, but it's not stuff you're picking every single day. And then even closer to the front of the warehouse is your rapid pick area. So the rapid pick area, you may deplete a given bin within a given day or multiple times throughout the day. And what's interesting about that is your deep storage fulfills your medium storage, and your medium storage sometimes fulfills your rapid turn storage. So imagine your warehouse of 150,000 square feet. Inside there you have cell phones. You have your really hot cell phones, you have your medium runners, and you have stuff that you have your reserves back in the back. So as you get orders from your customers, these pick tickets are going to be printed off, and these people are going to start pulling it. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that sort of speaks towards why you have an inventory move, because you may move it from the receiving area back to deep storage.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I do understand.
Okay. And of course, there are times who go crazy. There are times when people go crazy with a forklift. They run into product, they damage it. You have to have the ability to do like a physical inventory or a cycle count to bring the inventory either up if you find it or down if you break it. All right.
Okay.
So that more or less covers the material management. Then you start getting into accounting. So you sent your purchase order off to your vendor. They listened to your instructions. They came back with your product. You created a material receipt. You don't owe them officially from an accounting standpoint until you create your vendor invoice. And so your vendor invoice says, hey, I have accounts payable owed to this specific business partner, and it moves it out of, and of course it moves it out of this sort of pseudo, I'm doing a good job explaining this. It basically is the next step, and it moves your liability from your material receipt to your vendor invoice. And then, of course, and then ultimately you're going to pay your liability, and you can do that in the form of a check, or you can do it in the form of a wire, depending on where the person is in the world. And there's some fairly complex interactions that happen between your vendor invoice and your payment. Basically, they have to come together and cross each other out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I do understand the diagram.
Okay, excellent. And so when you move away from the purchasing side and you move to the sell side, so up until now, you've bought a bunch of, let's say you're starting a business. You've bought a bunch of equipment, your warehouse is full, and you're ready to take orders. Well, orders can come from all over the place. You could have a web store, you could have a retail store, you could have multiple retail stores. There are people who have, hundreds and hundreds of retail stores that they've got to aggregate orders for. There's customer service, and of course the customer service could be taking new orders, they could be processing repairs, RMA, stuff like that. And then you may also sell some of your stuff in alternate channels like eBay or Amazon. Yeah. So ultimately all these are sources of orders, but they've got to land somehow as a sales order in your system, right? And again, just like a purchase order, your sales order is your control document. In most situations, it has no financial consequence. It's just an instruction saying, hey, system, when all the criteria and all the moons and the suns all align the right way, go do something. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. And so now when you get into the concept of shipments and picks and packs, this is where customers tend to be very specific and very picky as to how their process works. So if you're a web retailer, and let's say you're Zappos, you're selling shoes, and you have 2 major warehouses in the U.S. that you use to fulfill all your orders, you will probably have people in the warehouse whose job literally is either to drive a forklift or to go drive a basket. They have these baskets on skateboards where you run up to a computer, you hit a button, it spits out 10 or 15 things that you need to get. It spits it out in order where when you go through the warehouse, it's as efficient as possible, and it basically tells you what to put into your basket. And then your last stop is shipping, where you hand them all the stuff that you picked, and they in turn they pack it. So there's a process by which you're basically, let me jump ahead a little bit. There's a process by which you basically are taking your inventory. There's this big queue of inventory, and you have this big queue of orders, and you're combining it together in an efficient process in the warehouse to get it on a truck or on a boat to the customer.
Yes.
All right. Now, SAP, Oracle. The interesting thing, Adempier, which is what I'm showing you here, which is an open source version of Oracle and SAP. The interesting thing about ERP software is it's ugly. It's amazingly ugly. It's literally a sea of windows and tabs and fields. And the biggest reason is that its sole purpose in life is to basically create, read, update, and delete records. They could be records for orders, they could be records for inventory, they could be records for accounting, but ultimately all you're doing is creating and reading, updating, deleting stuff. So the one I've showed you here is a product screen. So you have all the fields that you'd find out that you'd see for a product. And then on the left is all the things that relate to products. You could have a bill of materials, you could have replenishment, you could have related products, you could have it tied to specific business partners. So I put an arrow to the replenishment tab because when you go back to the purchasing side of the world, it's in a larger organization, if you're a $100 million organization, it's virtually impossible for you to keep track of what you need to buy. And in fact, in today's world, the algorithms that interpret customer demand are pretty interesting. There's all kinds of artificial intelligence that goes into what you need to buy. But in the end, that process, whether it be inside the ERP, like an Oracle or an SAP or a Dimpier, or if you use a third-party tool, it's going to yield, hey, here's what you need to have on your docks at a specific time to meet your demands. And it could be seasonal. Like if you're a seasonal business, you need to ramp up ahead of time. You can't overbuy, so forth and so on. But ultimately, this is where you specify the parameters that lead to the activities that happen later. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I'm going to have a question again about the replenishment. So when they order a product, you come here on the product, you put all the information related to that product. But and you say that when you have like a lot of product, it's difficult for you to track the product to know which one. I mean, to know the quantity you have to get to satisfy the customer. But if you come here and just click on this button of replenishment, it can give you all those information.
Yep.
That's what you're talking about?
That is what I'm talking about. You want me to show you an example?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a Dimpier. It's an ERP, and this is a simplified version of replenishment. So let's say you have a product and it's an azalea bush, and you have a replenishment tab. And so because it's a sub-tab, you can actually have one, and you may have warehouses all around the world. You may have one record per warehouse, but for this specific warehouse, for example, you may say, I want to maintain up to 30 at any given time.
Okay.
This is a simplified version of it because it could be, because you have all kinds of other factors. For example, if you're a wine distributor on the web, and it turns out during Christmas, a lot of your customers are like lawyers and accountants, and they go and buy wine for all their customers. You may see this massive spike in December or November where people are going along and buying gifts. Well, from a replenishment standpoint, you have to be able to account for that. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense now.
All right. So let's go back over here. Okay. Now, the only reason I threw this slide in, this is a picture of the purchase order, is just to show the fact that it literally is amazingly similar to the product. The only difference is the fields are different. So from a visibility standpoint, when someone asks, hey, do you have experience inside Oracle or SAP? They're not saying, hey, do you know how to use the application? They are sort of, and they aren't. They're asking you, do you understand the concepts of what it means to manage product? Do you understand what it means to manage inventory? And do you understand what it means to manage a queue of sales orders against your queue of inventory? Now, at some point, they're going to expect you to be able to manipulate the system. And the more experience you have, the better you can do that. But if you understand the concepts, to say, hey, I understand the concepts, just train me on the system, is, from an employer standpoint, it isn't the perfect situation, but it is in itself an exciting situation, especially if they say, well, talk to me about inventory management, or talk to me about order management, or talk to me about cycle counts, that type of thing. All right. May I move on?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay. Let's assume...
Yes, but I'm sorry, but quick question. So you're saying that the Dimpier we use in here is similar to SAP and Oracle when we talk about ERP?
Yes.
Okay.
Every ERP system has to cover some basics. Replenishment. Okay. And the concept of replenishment can be super simple in the case of a $50 million company or a $30 million company, or it could be amazingly complex. And it's not directly tied to size. It's tied to the unique circumstances that you have in your business. But yes, the answer to your question is a Dimpier is a free version of Oracle or SAP. I would describe it this way. If your domain is a 10 by 10 room, Oracle and SAP is a 10 by 10 rug. It'll fit that room perfectly almost always. A Dempierre is a 10-foot round rug in a 10-foot square room. It's going to leave some corner cases. There's absolutely going to there's some things that Oracle and SAP do that a Dempierre doesn't. So I love a Dempierre because from my perspective, the companies that I work with are typically about $100 million, $200 million in revenue. It fits their needs amazingly well, and they're not having to spend $2,000 per user per year just in licensing. So anyway, that's a tangent. For what I do, I absolutely adore a Dempierre.
Oh, okay.
All right. So let's talk about manufacturing for a little bit. You ready? All right. Up until now, I've made the assumption that the stuff that you buy is the stuff that you sell. If you're buying and selling baskets, for example, they're manufactured in, let's say, somewhere in Asia. They land on your dock in a box. They sit in your warehouse in a box, and when your customer buys it, you stick a label in that box and you send it to your customer. Right? There are situations though where you may make stuff. So let's say that you're making some sort of complex fiber, and you have a base fiber. You have fiber A and fiber B. They could be different colors. They could be different strengths. And you have a machine that basically braids them together to create a new product. And let's say that even though you can sell this semi-finished good, it's not the desired one. So you actually add carbon fiber to it for strength. You have another braider, and it creates a finished good.
Okay.
So on your buying side, your replenishment report may say, if you get an order from a big customer for a lot of your finished good, your replenishment report or your MRP process, I'll talk about MRP in a little bit, will say, hey, of this, I need time on this machine with this resource or this product and this product. If this product isn't sufficient, it'll say, oh, by the way, it'll circle back again and say, I need time on this machine with this product and this product. And oh, by the way, if we don't have this in stock, you need to go create purchase orders so that we can get it in stock in time to ultimately supply the customer its finished good.
Yes.
All right, so ERP is for enterprise resource planning. MRP is for manufacturing resource planning, I think. And in fact, the modern day term is MRP2. The original version MRP is materials resource planning, and then MRP2 is manufacturing resource planning. It's one step further. And oftentimes, your Oracles, your SAPs, your JD Edwards, they're all ERP systems. They'll have an MRP component to it. Like in the case of a Dempierre, it's of moderate strength and moderate capability. So,
okay.
All right. So we've introduced the concept of a raw good, a semi-finished good, in addition to what we talked about before, which is a completely finished good. Another concept, which is more simple but related, is let's say that you don't do manufacturing, but that you do. Let's say you're a cell phone distributor, and as a promotional item, there are times when you add extra stuff to your shipment as a means to incentivize people to buy more. So if you buy today, you can get a free case, right? So in that process, what happens is you're going to buy all these cases in anticipation for this promo. So those are all stocked items. But keep in mind, you're not selling cases, you're selling phones, right? Well, you can use the assembly or the manufacturing process to allow people in your warehouse, when they're picking the phones, they can pick a case, and the system will know, oh, by the way, for this particular part number, it gets a case. And so therefore, it knows that for every phone that ships, a case goes out, and it can manage the inventory on your cases as well. That's considered assembly. It's like assembly at the time of order, assembly at the time of shipping. So the term that you use to refer to that is, do you manufacture to stock or do you manufacture to order? Well, the concept of taking a case and bundling it at the time of shipment is an example of manufacturing to order or assembly to order. Now, what's interesting about that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Now, what's interesting about that is that then you start getting into people, like when you look inside of a company, if you were to peel off the roof, hold on one second. Sorry about that. So then when you take a company and you peel off the roof, you'll find a group of people who do nothing but product management. So marketing comes to them and says, "Hey, I've got a great idea. I want to go buy some cases, and I want to give it to the customer where if they buy within a certain, criteria, we'll throw in a free case." Well, the product person says, "Okay, great. How do I do that? I have to go into my ERP system. I have to tell it that I'm going to create a new part number, and this new part number, in addition to pointing to the old part number that we would normally sell, it gets combined with this case." And he or she has to tell the system, this is only going to be valid, say, for 3 weeks, and then we're going to make it go away. And we have to be able to communicate to the sales team, by the way, marketing came to us and said to do this. We've done this. When you go to use this, here's what that SKU looks like. So that's where product management comes into the mix.
Okay.
All right. So we've already seen this picture, which basically is the value of this picture is this. When you step way, way, way back away from the company, you look at it from a distance. The function of the company is to go create an inventory of resources, go create demand, which yields an inventory or a queue of orders, and then very intelligently mix the two together so that the right inventory goes to the right orders, it lands in the right truck, and ultimately the doorbell of the right person gets rung. So even though that simplistic picture is what you see from afar, far away, what you have to do to get there is you have to manage the replenishment process, you have to get the right products on the dock at the right time, you have to have the right resources inside your warehouse or in your manufacturing facility, you have to hire people, you have to pay people, you have to schedule people, you have to schedule machines, you have to make sure that that your demand system works, that your marketing works, right? Because when you think about, so I'm going to go on a tangent right quick, when you think about marketing, right? Marketing is, in the marketing world, you do something in order for something to happen. Like, for example, in today's presentation, the reason why I volunteered to talk to you is that even though I've been doing ERP for a long time, I'm just now going off on my own. And I saw your post, and I thought to myself, this is someone that I can help. And even though in an ideal world, there'd be 1,000 people on the phone right now, right? Maybe, maybe not. But this is my attempt to do something to create goodwill so that I become recognized as an expert. So in marketing, and there's a cost to this. I'm taking an hour out of my day, which I'm very happy to do, by the way. I mean, this is candy for me, so I'm happy to do it. But I'm investing time in order for me to create and find the right people. Because in an ideal world, you'd go get a job with a company. They hate their ERP. You'll say, I know this guy named Chuck Becking. He's a really knowledgeable guy, and he's totally he has the right frame of mind. We should talk to him, and that would make me smile from ear to ear. So, but my point is, in terms of marketing, they do things, they incur expenses in an attempt to increase profitability. Well, that fits inside ERP as well, because those expenses oftentimes are tied to campaigns. Let's go back to the cell phone cover example. I'm going to go spend $10,000 and I'm going to buy cases for my cell phones. Okay. I'm going to invest that $10,000 as part of this campaign. When I go to my website and I say, okay, here's my campaign, here's my bundle, when that website takes orders and it stuffs it in my ERP system, I'm going to tell the website, hey, flag this with this campaign. Well, even though a sales order doesn't post to the accounting engine, when the shipment and the invoice happens, they do. And so you can basically tie that whole process full circle. You spent $10,000 to generate more revenue some point in the future. When all those orders start flowing in, you tag those orders and those shipments, those invoices with that campaign, and you can see the profitability of your campaign. That is another example of how an ERP sort of fits into the bigger picture. It doesn't directly relate to logistics and supply chain, but it definitely speaks towards the bigger nature of Oracle and SAP.
Okay.
So what time is it? It is 1:36. So in preparing for today's conversation, that's all that I had. My question to you are a couple. One, was this helpful? What are the things that you liked? And what are the things that are missing that you think would make this better in the future?
To respond to the first question, I like it. This is an easiest way to explain to someone who is looking to get knowledge about something, to have him understand what the process, how the process is looking, and how to apply even what I'm learning in the real world. When I posted the comment you saw, I was reading, most of the time on the job requirement. I have a degree here, it's a master's degree. But at school, we didn't learn about the software, Oracle or SAP, for example, nothing. Yep. But when you read on job requirement, most of the time, they're going to say, we're looking for someone with Oracle, ERP experience. Sometimes they're going to say, okay, we're looking for someone with a warehouse management system experience. They're going to put Oracle or SAP. I'm like, I have no idea. I even went out there and choose even to get to understand more the Oracle software. Mm-hmm. But I started with the back end of the software, which is the database. I did the training, not really because I'm a computer guy. I'm not a computer person. But I was just curious to get to know the back end of Oracle to see if that can help me to make a decision about the type of module of Oracle I'm going to learn.
Yep.
So that's where I am. And I said to myself, I read SAP and Oracle. Most of the time, it's Oracle and SAP, what I see, and J.D. Edwards.
Yep.
So I said to myself, I want to see really, because what you show me, the table you show me about the replenishment, what to do, I was very happy. And it looked like for someone like me, I just want a company to give me a chance.
Yep.
Because I deal with software before. And if I have, like in this application, when you talk about product, if I have it in front of me, I'm sure as time goes on, I will master the process and be able to talk, to explain to someone else how ERP works with a lot of confidence.
Yep.
Is it SAP? Is it Adam Pierre? Is it Oracle? Because I even didn't know at the very beginning that ERP was combining all those functions together. Because it looks like it's a part of the software, as you said, that combine, I can say that put everything together, and you can see the influence of one action.
Yep.
Maybe in sector A, in sector B, rather than to separate all the sectors.
That is a very, very good observation. That is, and what's interesting about it too is that's the genius and the tyranny of an ERP system. If someone does a good job and they implement the ERP system well, that means at the end of the day, accounting's life is easy. All the systems are connected. Money and products are flowing through the system the way they're supposed to. And accounting's job is just to make sure that everything's happening the way it's supposed to. If their system is not connected well, or if it was implemented badly, and there were some assumptions made that aren't true, or there's just stuff they didn't know about, accounting's life becomes a nightmare. They're constantly having to fix stuff. They're constantly having to reclass money from one part of the company to the other. And so your comment,
everything.
yes, exactly. So your comment about, at a big picture, how everything's connected is profoundly valid and insightful.
Yes. But when it just looks like everybody comes in, maybe if it's an peer, I have a part I've used for myself to do my job. You, on the other side, you have a part you use to do your job.
Yep.
I can, maybe in the company, I can be a procurement specialist or manager or whatever. When I come and open an employer, I'm going to deal with all those purchases all the time. But if the warehouse manager is there, he's going to be using the warehouse organization or the warehouse, I don't know, in the same software. But what's surprising is that what you do is going to affect what the other person is going to do.
Yep. If you create, if person A creates trash, that trash will propagate through the whole system. If person A creates it the way it's supposed to, the system's a well designed. And even like I mentioned before that Oracle and SAP, they're bigger and they're more complex. In some ways they're more complex. In some ways they're not. But even having said that, a Dimpier, the system itself, has about 350 windows in it, and they have to do with like configuring performance or accounting or depreciation or payroll or asset management or reports, right? These are all things that go into managing your business. And now, and I think your comment is too, is that if you're playing a specific role within the organization, you're only going to see the windows that matter to you. Yeah. Or if you're a warehouse manager, you're only going to see the windows and reports that matter to you. So for me, my job in implementing and helping people learn ERP is to help them manage that process of getting the right roles with the right window access, stuff like that.
Okay. I don't understand.
Okay. Well, I think from my perspective, the goal of today's time has been achieved.
All right. At least I saw even how it looked like. Believe me, I didn't even know that it looked like this. I know I work, and maybe I use PeopleSoft a little bit. When I was working, I was dealing with 401k, so I used a bit of PeopleSoft. But I didn't have any presentation about how an ERP system can look like.
Yeah, I mean, literally.
So I'm happy at least I have an idea about how it looks like.
It's a sea of windows and tabs and fields. The purchase order looks like this. The product looks like this. They're all fields. There's a save button. There's a delete button. There's a, like in the case of a purchase order has states. So when you draft a purchase order, that means that it's, you're just getting started, but the system can't do anything with it. And then you can propagate it to a completed state, which means it's been approved and it's actionable. There's workflow associated with a purchase order where if it's above, say, $10,000, it has to go to a manufacturer and it gets routed behind the scenes to that manufacturer. I mean, to the manager for approval. But yeah, you're right. From a look standpoint, it's just literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of windows that are a bunch of fields.
Okay.
And there's more to it than this. But I think if you were to walk into an interview and someone said, Bosco, what do you know about Oracle or SAP? You could talk about the concepts that go into ERP. You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've recorded today's conversation.